G'day and welcome to the GameDay Squad NRL Fantasy Show. I'm Dyl, that's Stu, and we are the Fantasy Bros. We're excited to once again partner with GameDay Squad to bring you everything you need to know to succeed in GDS Rugby League in 2026. It's Wednesday. You know what that means. Teamless Tuesday has dropped. We've got plenty to discuss as well. There's plenty of injuries and suspensions that really they continue to pile up for a lot of teams, but in particular, the defending premiers, the Broncos, they just seem to be struggling with that injury list at the moment. Fortunately for us, as always, GDS do not have to worry about buying, selling, holding. We can just create that fresh team by pressing that clear team button and starting again. And we can ignore some of those players that haven't been named. Stu, welcome, mate. We've got plenty to get through in terms of positional previews. But how's your weekend been? We can't really talk about going around the grounds and talking about our teams yet, and we'll get to that in a moment. But how did your weekend end up in both NRL and GDS points?
Yeah, g'day Dyl, g'day everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again. Let us know how you went, how you think you went in the comments anyway, and make some predictions. Let us know if you think you're going to make the top 20 this round. Still waiting for those leaderboards to update. Dyl, bit of a nervous wait for me. I think I did well in prime time, GDS, and gee, I was hoping results would be out. I'd love to see how my little battle with Skip went. There's a bit of a narrative behind that. Skip, if you're listening, I won't spoil just yet. I might reveal all on the Sunday stream, or maybe wait till this time next Wednesday. But Dyl, you're going to love it, and Skip is going to love it even more, depending on those results. But yeah, regardless, look, the footy was okay. Had some massive scores, some big shootouts, and some big fantasy points as a result. I just couldn't get any edge forwards right. That was my position that came unstuck for me. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to be too high on the leaderboards when they update. Unfortunately, I got a lot of the ones I picked didn't score tries. The ones I didn't pick seemed like they scored tries for fun.
Yeah, I was fortunate with the Olakau'atu shout. Obviously, the data was pointing towards him having a big game against the Panthers. I also played Semi Sasangi, who we talked about plenty of times. We were a bit scared to play him when he was lining up in the centres. That edge forward in the centres just looked a bit gross, but coming back and playing on that edge forward, that edge role, I was pretty keen to get him in my side, and I think he scored pretty well. So hopefully that combination there, along with a few others, might see me do all right in Champion. I know in the Discord we had a lot of people getting out their calculators and trying to work out the maths and going through all the stats. So it was great to see some old school style of working out where we're at and what we're scoring. And it was great to get some engagement and some chatter there. But yeah, fingers crossed. Obviously, GDS on their side of things, hope everything is going well. They've obviously looking at a new stats provider and updating those a little bit easier, so it's a bit more streamlined and a little bit more accurate. We know that some of those stat changes occur really last minute, Monday morning, Monday midday. So we want to make sure that that's accurate. And so GDS are just working out and tweaking with that. So fingers crossed we get those results, maybe even mid-show. That would be unreal if we can get to there. But look, let's jump straight into the action, mate. Talk to us about what our viewers can expect in the show tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Every Wednesday we'll come live, sharing everything that you need to know for the upcoming round. And it's going to be a big one. Next round is even going to be even bigger there at Magic Round. Stay tuned for a bit of Fantasy Bros appearance there next weekend. But every Wednesday night, we're going to preview who we think are the best start and sits across each of the positions, as well as some bench spots. We're going to discuss the important start sits and our consensus all-bronze starter team. We'll talk about the prime time competition as well. We'll talk about the Sunday Showdown. We'll talk about a lot of players that are going to feature across a lot of our squads. We're going to talk about some players that we think are fades. We're going to talk about some players that are pretty big points of difference. And I think this round, particularly in that fullback position, geez, there are a plethora of good options this round. Pretty excited to see who you're going to reveal as some pods or some fades. Still, everyone else needs to stay tuned to that. So yeah, absolutely a lot to preview every single Wednesday, and the AFL boys will follow us once we're done. So make sure you hang around for Pity, and I think Haz is going to be on the show tonight as well. For those that have seen Haz have a lot of success so far this season, he'll be live on the show. I think he's put the show ahead of some footy commitments this evening. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can get all of the good information. Even if you miss out on the live show, you can catch up on YouTube, you can catch up on Apple, you can catch up on Spotify as well. So make sure you go give those apps a like. Just simply search FantasyBros AU, subscribe, and keep up with the good stuff, because although the scores haven't updated, as you heard, Dyl and I have had some continued success there as well. And Dyl, it's not too late to get started, is it?
No, that's right. And before I tell everyone how we can do that, mate, you know it's going to be a good show when Stewie drops a plethora nice and early in the show. So you know we've got a big one planned for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so look, it's not too late. And look, yeah, you might look at it and think 10 rounds in or about to be 10 rounds in, there's no way I can get involved in this fantasy platform now, but this is a perfect time to get started. You just download the app, visit the GameDay Squad website, use our promo code FBRL26. You're going to get rewarded with 3x9 player common packs. Plus, you're going to get a heap of bronze starter cards as well, and that can build your starter side. You can probably build a bit of a contender side as well with some of those free common packs. And look, I'm proof that even starting from the beginning and just building your squad over time and not spending a cent means that you can have success. Currently, I know nothing about AFL, and I am first on the overall leaderboard in the starter competition, purely just based on the cards that I've collected over time and listening to the Fantasy Bros for the AFL side of things. So there's definitely a way to get involved without spending any cash, and there's plenty of chances to win as well. We've got plenty of money on the line. We've got pack prizes, etc., to be won each and every round of the NRL season. And I know just quietly, I saw today that some of the other fantasy platforms are now following in the steps of GameDay Squad, and they've released an Origin competition where the GameDay Squad were already ahead of the game there. We've got a wonderful Queensland versus New South Wales competition that's coming up obviously very soon that you can be a part of as well. So it's a perfect time to join and get around that. Mate, I think we can get straight into it. Obviously, everyone's here for a bit of analysis, so let's jump straight in with the hookers, remembering that in our forward position, we can have that one hooker. We've got the 3 middles, the 2 edges, and then we've got an opportunity to play any 2 of those combinations. So we don't really like playing 2 hookers, but if there's an opportunity and you see an opportunity, maybe you like some of the stats we talk about, there could be a chance there. Obviously, we've got the 3 big boys in the strongly considered. We've got Blake Brayley, Harry Grant, and Damien Cook back off that bye. In our point of difference, we've got a couple of guys that one we've talked about previously, and one is brand new to the show, I think, completely, and that's Reece Robson, and then Tristan Hope finds his way into that point of difference role. And then on that fades list, look, we've got Garlic there again after another horrible, I think 7 points he ended up scoring. And then Jeremy Marshall-King sneaks his way into the fades at the moment. He is on the extended bench, obviously coming back from that off-season injury, and we might have a touch on whether we think he might get any game time. But starting us off, mate, those 3 strongly considered, is there one in particular that you're keen on, or is it a bit of a mix and match across all of your sides with Brayley, Grant, and Cook?
Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? I think I might actually have to go one per team, being Classic, Challenger, and Champion, just because I know if I lock one bloke into all 3 sides, it's going to be the wrong choice. So if I put all 3 in, surely one of them is going to go off. Chances are that all 3 are. Maybe I could hit 2 out of 3. I just don't know. The hooker position seems so difficult. But look, I know you might be able to tell us some info about some base and power stats, which are pretty telling. But for me, it's all about the matchup this round. And it's Brayley versus the Rabbitohs. Rabbitohs are the easiest matchup for hookers. They're giving about 44.3 points. The second easiest matchup for all hookers. So we know that Brayley is one of the best hookers in the competition. He's so close to a Sky Blue Origin jersey as well. He'll want to make these couple of games leading into Origin selection really count. So, yeah, I think he's one of the safest plays. Damien Cook has some tremendous upside. Harry Grant's the king of demerits. But look, Melbourne Storm have to turn things around, don't they? I think I can just rinse and repeat what I've said the last 6 weeks, and eventually it's going to come true. But look, the Storm aren't going well. Harry Grant's not going that well. So I think I might default to Blake Brayley in my favourite team, my number 1 team, and maybe find a spot for Cook and Grant elsewhere. But it's the demerits for Grant that are pretty telling. The matchup's pretty positive for for Brayley, and the base and power stats, they're pretty similar, pretty consistent across all 3, aren't they?
Yeah, and so as you said, base and power demerits are obviously the key factors that we're looking for in our hooker position. There's not a lot of upside in terms of attack really across them. Probably Grant and Cook, the more attacking upside than Brayley, but we've seen him with a couple of try assists, etc. But I thought instead of just taking one player and talking about it, I chucked the 3 of them into the Stats Lab player comparison. Now, if you're a Stats Lab member, you can use this player comparison tool, and it's a great way to have a look at the differences between each of these players and how they're performing. There's a really good graph actually that shows their fantasy stats and sort of the fluctuations. And the key for me from that graph to summarize is that Grant and Cook are fluctuating a lot from high and low scores, whereas Brayley's been pretty consistent across every game he's played, which is obvious. One of the reasons why we're picking him as one of our key players. But yeah, breaking down that base and power in terms of tackle numbers, running meters, and then tackle breaks as well. Brayley's sitting at 50 GDS points on average, Grant 51, and then Cook is the leader in that in 55. So there's not a huge difference, but Cookie just gets the nod there. But it's the demerits that you touched on that are the key ones. Brayley 8.5, Cookie 8 demerits per game, and it's Harry Grant with the most of 13 demerits per game. So for me, that might be the telltale sign. The other sign for me is that Grant's up against the Tigers. They're the second hardest matchup in GDS for hookers, allowing only 32 GDS points. Real flip side to what we just said about Brayley being the second easiest matchup. Cookie as well has got the hardest matchup. The Knights are actually the best at limiting all hookers in the competition so far this season with only 31. So I think for me, it's Brayley across most of my sides. And then maybe the Harry Grant, purely based on that bounce back factor. At some point, it has to happen. They've obviously got a lot of adversity that they're facing at the moment with the Bellamy news coming out last week as well. And that might just give them something more to play for over the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, give me mostly Brayley with a little bit of Grant here and there, which, look, to be honest, Michael Cozzy does not like at all. He's got the big capital letters. He's shouting at us saying, no, Harry, no. So I'm not sure if that's against Harry or saying that he wants to play Harry and we're belittling Harry at the moment. But make sure you get in your comments as well and let us know who you are picking in each of your positions. In terms of those points of difference, mate, we put in Robson first. He's sort of been on this, I don't know, he's been a little bit understated. We sort of talked about him a little bit. He had a couple of down games and then he's starting to build himself back up again. Is he a player that you're going to get to in any of your competitions?
No, he's not. I just think he's a bit of a watch. I feel like him and Brayley are going to be named in that Blues squad somewhere. So he probably won't even be an option over the Origin period. But just say he was to miss out and maybe they went a Brayley, Connor Watson type combination off the bench and we had a Breesy Robson through the Origin period. I think he's someone, Harry Grant won't be there. Blake Brayley, we expect not to be there as well. So someone like Reece Robson could be a lot more reliable through that period. But yeah, look, I don't think he comes into consideration when we've got those three big players to choose from. He's averaging below 50, only 3 points above Phoenix Crossland. And look, no real shame on that man's name, but he doesn't really come into consideration on a full round play, does he? He's a bit of a Sunday Showdown superstar, old Phoenix Crossland, but Reece Robson's only averaging about 3 more points than him. So look, I don't think I can get to a Reece Robson, although the Roosters, I think, are one of the form teams in the competition. I think their pack can tear the Titans to shreds as well. So yeah, you'd have to be a pretty brave man to back against maybe a Brayley or a Grant against those depleted Tigers, but Reece Robson wouldn't be the worst shout if you were looking for a pod.
Yeah, and I've got another really nice pod potentially as well that it probably doesn't jump out as the shiniest pod that we can bring out on the show, but he won't have a massive ceiling. But it's Tristan Hope, who last week in 80 minutes against the Sharks, he made 57 tackles. He did miss 3, so there's 9 points in demerits, but he offset that with 3 tackle breaks. So you get 3 points for your tackle breaks as well. So it's quite a nice way to offset there. So 57 tackles in 80 minutes is really good. Obviously, Api Coruscant suspended for another week, as you can see on screen there. So Tristan Hope might be one of those plug and plays where you don't quite have the options that we're talking about in terms of the strongly considered. You might be new to the competition, or you might have a gold Hope and you want to get into Classic or maybe the Contender side. So I think Tristan Hope might be a player there that you could, as long as you think there's going to be the replication of the tackle count against the Storm. Obviously, the Storm like to muscle up through the middle, so there might be every opportunity for him to even get a 6-0 in that tackle count, maybe. As long as he can remain on the field for the full duration, I think he's going to be a great option. It looks like that bench doesn't really have a hooker replacement, so I could see Tristan Hope spending 80 minutes on the field. And as a result, it'll all be in base. There's no running game there to add to it, so it'll all be just tackles. But yeah, if he can get around 55 to 60 tackles, it's a really good return for you. Yeah,
not for me though, with the other options available.
Yeah, definitely. And then, as I said, Garlic definitely a do not touch, even though he's starting. I think he lasted 25 minutes in the game last week and he scored 7 GDS points. So I'm pretty sure based on my calculations. So I think that's a line through him. Then, as I said, Jane K, is that someone that you're just keeping an eye on and looking at? Does he come onto the field at all? Does he replace Max Plath in the final side? And we actually do get Jeremy Marshall King for the full extent of the game. What are your thoughts around that, mate?
Yeah, maybe. If he's named on that extended bench, probably do expect him to get a bit of a run. I can't see it being 80 minutes, and certainly not at the expense of Max Plath, who's been going really nicely there in the number 9 jersey. That freak accident JMK suffered at home, was it another slip in the shower?
Yep.
The knee surgery as a result of the knee slip, the slip in the shower. So you don't hear about that too often. And
no.
Poor JMK. Hopefully he's come back well from that. He was a name that we got to quite often in years gone past, and he could get through plenty of tackles, and he's got a bit of attacking upside there as well. The Finns are looking pretty decent. They may be impacted by Origin a little bit more than they have in the past. But yeah, he might be a guy that we talk about a bit more during that Origin period, just not this week. Definitely a watch and see.
Yeah, definitely. Alrighty, let's jump into middles. And a little bit boring this week, but we're going back to the tried and true method, I think, of pairing up a couple of Tigers with Isaiah Yeo, who's found his way back into the strongly considered, which is great to see. So those Tigers, Alex Twal and Tyrrell May, obviously. Then we've got a couple of decent points of difference. Pat Carrigan crossed over, I think, for his 5th try of his career on the weekend, and then Toby Couchman as well as another player that we're really keen on. And then in our fades list, I'll let you talk about Trey Mooney and why you're keen to fade him after his massive performance. And then also Cam Murray's not quite reaching those heights that we expected. But is there anything that we need to think about when we are looking at our middles outside of those first 3 blokes in that strongly considered of Twal, Yeo and May?
Yeah, without Jacko Ford, I think those 3 are going to provide a lot of stability. And yeah, like you said, Isaiah Yeo is definitely finding some fantasy relevance. Once again, it was a bit shaky there to start the season, and those scores below 50 were pretty poor, weren't they? We've seen a lot more consistency from him, both with minutes on the park, getting through plenty of work, and won't be too far away until he finds some attacking upside, a try assist. So yeah, I'm really comfortable playing all 3 of those, and I think you can even throw Toby Couchman amongst that as well. In a similar way to Isaiah Yeo, he started the season pretty poorly. He was overshadowed by his twin brother. I still believe that they swapped jerseys and we're getting each other's stats. But Toby Couchman, yeah, a lot more relevant in the past. Some big scores, some 60s, some 70s, a lot more minutes. The PPM is going up as well. I couldn't get the edge forwards right last week, so I like all 4 of them, and maybe even Paddy Carrigan again without Payne Haas, and maybe I just lock in the safety of those middles that are getting big minutes, big PPM. They're unlikely to score tries, particularly, Paddy Carrigan coming off one last week, unlikely to go back to back. But when I can't get the edges right, I might just go 5 through the middle. I think I'll definitely go 4. I like the Toby Couchman shout. Paddy Carrigan probably finds a spot somewhere, because I know you're pretty keen on him as well with no Payne Haas. And anyone that played him last week were nicely rewarded as well. I didn't quite get there, but definitely regret that decision. It just made so much sense. And seeing 80 minutes next to his name was a bit of a no-brainer, wasn't it, with Payne Haas?
Yeah. And that was the frustrating thing. I think we'd sort of focused a little bit on Xavier Willison, or I had anyway, after his big performance the 2 weeks prior. And then as a result, it was Paddy Carrigan that did all the damage. So, I think going back to that, I'd be quite happy too. He's obviously not going to score a try every week, so you can't expect the 70, 75 with the try involved as well, but you can probably expect something more like 60 to 70 points in that 80 minutes. He's played 80 minutes in the 2 games that Payne Haas haven't been there, in that round 4 and round 9. So I would expect something similar again from him. And as a result, like you said, something close to that point per minute from Paddy Carrigan, I think, is the way to go. The difficulty for me, as you said, you struggled with the edges last week. It's, do we play the safety of 4 middles and 3 edges, or do we look, or even 5 middles potentially, at the way maybe you're going, or is there some upside there for the edges? We had 13 potential edge forwards last week that we could choose from that were averaging within 50 and 60. And if you've got 13 players, it's quite difficult to then narrow that down to just 2 or even just 3. So there's obviously a lot of strategy involved there. And if you do go with your 4 edges, which middle are you leaving out? Are we leaving out Couchman, who's in some form, although they've got quite a tough matchup against the Knights because they're in absolute red-hot form at the moment? Do we leave out one of those Tigers players that are just competing with each other to score more points GDS-wise? Or do we leave out Yeo, who's back to probably his best that we've seen in a long time, and putting his hand up again for obviously another nudge at Origin, as we'd expect? So, the strategy is about who do we leave out, not so much who do we play here. And it's obviously where some differences are going to be. I know for me, I'm still looking at the 4 middles and then probably the 3 edges, just because we've got 3 really good players. But Is there anyone in particular that you really want to talk about fading? Is Trey Mooney that top of the list for you that you want to fade?
Yeah, there's a bit to this. There's a couple of levels here, and those that were with us on the Sunday Showdown may have heard a comment about Trey Mooney's ability to score. Was it, I think, 97 GDS points? I think you compared him to Adamaho, who scored 97 a few weeks ago. XRP didn't play him. XRP won the weekly that round. So the whole idea was you don't necessarily need to get the guy that top scores. You just need a combination of players that go, well, the correct rarities. It's not game over if you've got a bloke scoring 90 plus. And I said, if Trey Mooney scores 97, then I'll happily give up the ticket that I won last weekend. And gee, he got close, didn't he? He must have taken that comment personally. I think we might say it was 89 points. I think you mentioned that the Stats Lab has updated player stats there, and 89 is close to 97 or 92, whatever the number was I did say. But I was correct, wasn't I? He wasn't going to score 92 or 97 points. But no, look, 89 points, massive. I wouldn't recommend chasing last week's points. We say it plenty of times, but that's just the pinnacle of don't chase last week's points in Trey Mooney. A middle forward, still not getting huge minutes, but getting 2 pretty soft tries through the middle there. Just running over the top of 4 blokes from 3 meters out, and then in acres of space after Dill Brown poked his head through and put him over the line there. So he had plenty of 30-point scores without any tries. Yes, he is a middle forward that is in a bit of a purple patch scoring tries. He's not going to do it every week. I'm even going to double down here and leave him out of my under 24 squad.
Oh yeah, big call. And for those listening, obviously injuries and suspensions are part of this as well. And we've got now on screen, we've got Payne Haas and Max King, 2 semi-relevant. I mean, obviously Payne Haas super relevant, Max King a little bit relevant to fantasy, but obviously Payne Haas is injured at the moment, so that's why we're not talking about him at all. So if you are listening and you're thinking, why aren't these blokes bringing in Payne Haas, and you're not sure why, that's the reason why we're not talking about him. Look, the other player that I'm really disappointed in, and a player that I've liked for a long time, is Cam Murray, and he's just got this ability to be an unreal player on the field and do just absolutely everything. I think he made a really great try-saving tackle in the middle of the game last weekend, and he just ends up with very little GDS points this season. He played 80 minutes for the first time on the weekend, and he still pumped out similar or worse numbers compared to a 65-minute performance that we've seen from him. If the GDS stats on Stats Lab are correct, which they look to be, it was a 37-point performance in 80 minutes from Cam Murray. And we've sort of seen around that 50, 55 mark from him earlier in the season. It's just been getting worse from there. So it's hard for me to find a spot for someone like that. The other player that I'm not quite sure about is Uda Ikamanu, who stepped up a little bit against the Dolphins. They're obviously up against the depleted Tigers that we'll spend plenty of time talking about, but he's only spending a maximum of 60 minutes on the park, and he's just returning just less than 1 point per minute. But the Tigers are really good at restricting starting prop forwards this season. They're restricting them to an average of less than 40 GDS points. So I'm just not sure about Uda Ikamanu in any of my squads as well, particularly when we've got the upside of those 4 guys that we've already talked about. So I'll be leaving both of them out. I'm not sure if I can leave Trey Mooney out of my under 24 sides just based on that matchup with the Dragons, and the Dragons just being absolutely woeful at restricting GDS points to all positions. But we'll see. I'm still waiting for final scores before I clear my team, just in case. I want to make sure that they're all sorted before I clear my team and start building. But yeah, I'd say Trey Mooney's there and thereabouts for sure. Alrighty, let's jump into the edge forwards, and this is where the conundrum begins. Obviously, quite a few injuries and suspensions. Noah Martin out. Somehow has done both ankles and requires surgery on both ankles. Unfortunate for Noah Martin. Who would have thought that's possible? Samuel Afainu, who's been in some unreal form as well, he's out at the moment, and then so is David Fafita. I think round 12 is when David Fafita might make a return. But in terms of who we're looking at, we've got Hamole Olakau'atu, Sasangi, and Dill Lucas in our strongly considered. A couple of key points of difference in Fini Fuiaki and Lasardi, and then our fades. Jacob Preston, I'll talk about why he's there. I don't necessarily think he's a fade, but then Huddy Young as well, and we'll talk through potentially why we think maybe Huddy Young's a fade this round on his return to NRL. But mate, talk through Semi Sasangi. He's your man. He's from the Raiders. He is just absolutely killing it at the moment, whether he plays in the centres, where he plays on the edge. Is he just one of the first blokes you're picking in the edge forwards?
Yeah, he is. But I will say sorry to Simi Sasangi owners and coaches that have played him ad nauseum over the last month or so, because I simply have not. I just haven't backed it to continue playing in the centres in our edge forward position. It just felt yuck. He then got injured, did his hammy. He came back from injury, named in the back row. I just didn't think that he'd hit the ground running and be that explosive. Scored 2 tries, 64 GDS points. You'd probably expect maybe a few more points, playing 80 minutes in the back row, scoring 2 tries with 2 line breaks. But obviously 64 points on the surface is a fantastic score. You'd be happy with that. And obviously, Dyl, you'd be over the moon with that in Champion as well. It would have been fist pumping seeing him cross the line. He will move over to the right-hand side and has a matchup with the Penrith Panthers. Who was the last person with that matchup that we faded? That was Jacob Preston. I cannot fade my boy Simi in red hot form, and in that same position that Preston scored about 86 points there against the Penrith Panthers, particularly running over and through Blaze Talangi all night long. We've seen it a few weeks that all teams are taking advantage of that matchup. Even last week, I think Haumole Olakau'atu had a really big outing as well, and he had that same matchup despite Penrith being the pinnacle team here in season 2026. A few teams have gotten close in recent weeks, but that right edge spot is just scoring points for fun. I think Hutto Young will get his fair share on the left-hand side, but things will happen there on the right. The Raiders are just giving Simi the ball and saying, do what you can, mate. The run meters will be down. He won't tick over 200 playing on the edge like he did in the centres, but he might offset that with some extra tackles and maybe a few extra tackle breaks running over the top of poor little Blaze. So, yeah, we got to wait till Sunday for the big Simi show, but it's going to be worth it. Trust me. Let's roll out Simi.
Yeah, and just on that, if you look at what Olakau'atu did last week against Blaze Talangi and the Panthers on that side, he ended up with 41 tackles, 180 running meters, 4 tackle breaks, 2 offloads, a line break, and a try assist. And he ended up with, I think that's 80 GDS points. That's what the Stats Lab is showing at the moment. So add his 80 points to the 80 odd that Preston scored a couple of weeks ago, and all the other right-sided edges this season. The Panthers are allowing an average of almost 60 GDS points to right edge forwards. So there's definitely an opportunity there to exploit that. And I think Simi's good enough, and he's shown that he's good enough, that he's going to do something similar to what Olakau'atu and Preston's done previously. So I think, yeah, he's one of the first that's on that list for sure. Blaze Talangi, he's going to continue to add to his missed tackle count, just like Ezra Mam is for the Broncos. And look, talking about Olakau'atu, I think it's hard not to go back to him against those Broncos, particularly on that left edge. They haven't really done a whole lot in terms of defense, although they did learn how to tackle on the weekend against the Roosters. I did read a stat that potentially it's one of the lowest missed tackle counts in recent NRL history, and they only had 29 missed tackles across both sides. So Ezra and Shibasaki, though, they still missed 3 between them, so their missed tackle counts continues. A shame for Siwa Wong owners. He didn't quite reach the heights that we were hoping. We obviously talked a lot about him. We didn't quite exploit that matchup as much, but I think Olakau'atu, hard not to go back to him again. He's going to obviously have a massive game. Holy moly is just going to get through that line, and I think there's potentially a try with Holy moly as well, running up against Ezra Mam and the like. So I think Olakau'atu for me is going to have a big game.
Yeah, I agree. He's got Jamal Fogarty back there alongside him this round. He's been a different player, Haumole under Kieran Foran, and when he's scoring fantasy points for fun, you just got to get him in your side as well. He's another guy I'm guilty of not playing in all 3 teams, in all 3 main teams. So I've got to rectify that this week. So again, apologies in advance if he does get broken and doesn't score above 55 or something. That would be a bit disappointing if we don't see it at least a 55. So you can blame me if that's the case. But no, I think great play, and he'll get plenty of tackle breaks as well.
And the one thing that we don't like doing, Stu, and we've done it quite a few times in the past, not so much this season, but in the past, is playing the same 3 or 2 blokes in the same position, and it really backfiring on us. But we're going to go 3 for 3 here. Talk to us about Dill Lucas and the Knights and how good they are at the moment.
The Knights left side in particular, they are absolutely humming. The return of KP, we had Best and Marju coming back from short-term injuries, Dill Lucas as well, Fletcher Sharp had a bit of a pep in his step as well after some disappointing matches upon his return from injury as well. And look, that shootout against the Rabbitohs, I know some people are saying 2026 footy is a bit boring. There's too many points being scored, but when you're playing Game Day Squad fantasy and you need attacking points to separate yourself from other coaches, it's fantastic watching footy. So if you can load up on Knights left-hand players, you're going to score plenty of points, particularly this weekend here against the Dragons. They looked something else, didn't they? And the ball just kept going left with Sharp and KP. And Dyl Lucas, beautiful hole running straight through a gap. And it looked like he was under a massive score. He then scored another try, and you were thinking, oh, here we go. Here's a monster 80. A bit like Simi Sasungi. Didn't quite score the monster you'd expect from an edge back rower playing 80, scoring 2 tries. 64 as well, just like Simi Sasungi, just the 35 tackles and 100 run meters. But when there are, 80 points being scored, 80 NRL points being scored, there's plenty of time standing around watching the ball sail over the goalpost and standing under them waiting to kick off. So, you can sort of forgive that the base stats were down there a little bit. Still a PPM of 0.8 through that match, which was well above some previous outings from Dyl Lucas, which was down around 0.5 and 0.6, which is definitely not typical of him. So, look, KP comes back. The left-hand side is back in action, and his PPM straight back up to 0.8, sort of where you expected as well. So, yeah, even if the attack doesn't come, Dyl Lucas is good enough. The Knights are good enough to get things happening, and he just provides a nice ceiling on a pretty reliable floor there. The Dragons matchup is just the icing on the cake for me. So what could go wrong, mate? Olakuatu, Simi Sasungi, Dyl Lucas, lock it in. Nothing can go wrong, can it?
And move on. No, look, there's obviously a very clear theme through this show, and there's probably 2 themes, really. It's 1, Knights players against the Dragons, and then 2, potentially Tigers players up against, the Storm players up against the depleted Tigers. So there's a few matchups there that we really like. But Dyl Lucas, I think, he's in the perfect spot against the Dragons here. They're allowing an average of 63 GDS points. So I said the Panthers had 57 that they were allowing to right side. The Dragons are way worse, and obviously that makes sense. They haven't played some really good footy at all, the Dragons, recently. 63 GDS points to left edges. That includes the aforementioned Hose 97, Kickow 72, and then a 60-plus from both Lasardi and Katonga earlier in the season. And really, if you look at Dyl Lucas and what he offers, he's head and shoulders above a lot of those guys. And I think it's a really easy, high floor, high ceiling play. There is obviously always some risk involved with edge forwards and the way that they sort of play, and the issues that we talk about if an edge forward goes out to the centres because there's been an injury, there's maybe a decrease in production unless you name Simi Sasungi. But I think for me, Dyl Lucas is just that typical high floor, high ceiling. There's not a huge amount of risk involved, and he's going to end up with something around that 55, as you said, but then he can get into the 80s, the 90s potentially as well in a big game. So I think it's just another smash play. And like you said, nothing can go wrong then. But if for whatever reason you do not like following us, or with all 3 blokes, we've got 2 really good options in Lasardi up against the Tigers, and then Fini Fuiaki up against the Bulldogs. Talk to me, mate, about Fini Fuiaki and how we just can go to this bloke, because he's just on another level at the moment.
He's just so good. Unfortunately, we're probably going to lose him from our Game Day Squad teams over the Origin period, but also a pretty big bonus there for Queensland that are going to get a damaging player there on the edge, and I think that's going to be a bit of a better selection than Cody Capewell. But Fini Fuiaki, 72 points there against the Storm. You probably look at that matchup and go, Storm will be up for this. They'll defend well. Doesn't stop him scoring a late try, 2 line breaks, 4 tackle breaks, and offload, 210 run meters. And that's huge. But he's done it 4 times. He's passed 200 run meters 4 times. That's 20 points in base. He's averaging 35 tackles a game. And if he can get to 200 run meters, that's already above 50 before you add in any attacking stats. And look, he's breaking almost 4 tackles per match as well, because he's a big body and he's running over some small halves. So he is a guy that keeps getting the job done regardless of opposition. He's done it against the Penrith Panthers with a nice 70. No tries, no try assists, but 247 run meters against a tough opponent there. He's done it against the Bronx with 79 points and 7 tackle breaks, 220 run meters. He's just getting it done. So it's a tough week to leave someone like him out. So I'm going to load up on him with plenty of salary in the under-24s with the Stats Lab primetime competition as well. I just think that, the 3 matches on the screen are such slam dunks. To leave out a bloke like Fino Fuiaki, it just means the other matchups must be gold.
And look, against the Storm there, what did he cross the line about 3 times and obviously ended up with 1 try from those. But he's just so damaging, and he was breaking that line and almost getting over at will. The Question mark for me, though, is the Bulldogs matchup. Before round 10, they were averaging 51 GDS points to that side of the field for edge forwards. But then against the Cowboys, the Dogs restricted both sides of the field. Lukey and Nanai both scored less than 30 GDS points. So that could be a bit of a telltale sign as well that the Bulldogs are sort of tightening up on the edge a little bit and maybe allowing some more through the middle. We saw some damaging runs by a couple of players. I think Tomalolo even got over for a try there against the Dogs. So maybe that's a bit of a sign as well. But like you said, he's getting to this realm of matchup proof. If he can run 200 run meters, if he can make 35 tackles, it doesn't really matter if he's got any attacking stats on the end of that 55, you'd be pretty happy with either way. So yeah, it's one of those players that very hard to leave out. Fortunately, we do have a couple of special competitions that we can play him in, particularly that under 24 side where I think he's going to have a lot of salary on for me this weekend for sure. Alrighty, I did touch on it. Jacob Preston currently sitting in the fade list, but just a bit similar to what I said last week with Nicho Hynes, and obviously that backfired, and we're just going to move on from that completely. But I don't necessarily think Preston's a fade. The matchup looks a little bit tougher. The Dolphins are only allowing 44 GDS points, which you'd think that there's something there for Preston, and we know last time we said that, the Panthers ended up allowing him to score plenty. But there's better options elsewhere. We talk about Fini Fuiaki, we talk about Lasardi, and then those three strongly considered. I just don't think I can get myself to Jacob Preston in the full round slate. Are you with me there, or do you think I'm thinking about a couple of weeks ago and really should be just getting him in my teams?
No, I'm with you there. I think he's definitely carrying something. We saw him with a shoulder complaint. Whispers are that he's actually getting needled up for both shoulders and playing through a bit of pain. And when you look at some of his numbers, despite that big 80-point performance against the Penrith Panthers, he went 22, 43, 42, 38 either side of that fixture as well. So there's definitely something happening there. He's not quite the Jacob Preston that he was last season, where he was one of the top two plays just about every single round. And when you're questioning whether to start him or not, I think it's pretty easy to put a line through him. Wait till you see some improvement. The Dogs are a bit of a rabble at the moment as well. There's not a lot happening for them. I think they've got to shake a few things up in order to get the best out of blokes like Jacob Preston. But no, to summarise, not for me this round either.
Yeah, and then Hudson Young, obviously returning, moving to the left edge up against the Panthers. Pretty tough matchup. We talk about exploiting the right side, but the left side's only allowing 35 GDS points. So I think for me, it's just a watch and wait. We've obviously had a couple of down games from Huddy. He did return for coaches that did play him. He did have a couple of good returns there in the last few weeks before he had that hiatus, but it's just a watch and wait for me. I just would rather see him back for a couple of weeks against maybe an easier opponent. Is that the same for you as well?
Yeah, I feel like almost any other matchup, and he'd be a lot more in consideration for me, but just the Penrith Panthers, Nathan Cleary's side. I don't know if there are any numbers to back this up necessarily, but I dare say that right-hand side of the field break plenty of tackles, and therefore the left-hand side of the field rack up plenty of demerits. We might have to look deeper into that and see if that is actually something that is true, but it certainly makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense. And yeah, that's a good thing. We miite have a look. Alrighty, let's jump into the halves. You touched on Cleary. Obviously, he is a go-to each and every week. There's no reason not to play him unless you maybe trying to get cute, and anti-potting potentially. But we've got some other strongly considered in Nicho Hynes and Jerome Hughes coming off the HIA, had a week off and he's back. We've also got some key points of difference. I know that you want to talk about one in particular, but we've got Fletcher Sharp and Mitch Moses there, who we haven't really talked about a lot this season, Mitch Moses, so no doubt we'll have a chat about him. Then on the fades, we've got a couple of decent fades. JC, Jaden Campbell is probably the big one of the week, and we'll talk about some reasons why. And then Cameron Munster, we touched on him on Sunday in terms of the cliff that he's fallen off, the fantasy cliff that I'm not sure if he can recover from at the moment. But talk us through, obviously, the next best after Cleary. It's got to be Nicho Hynes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. He's just been super impressive, super consistent, despite a really out of character, poor 25-point outing against the Roosters. He's just been absolutely insane. 270s back-to-back in the last couple of matches, just the 1 try and 3 try assists across those 2 matches. He's getting it done in all statistical categories. Obviously, the goal kicking is where he's, a bit better against the likes of Jerome Hughes, Fletcher Sharp, that don't kick for their clubs. But Yeah, he's absolutely getting it done in all categories. He's also reducing his demerits quite considerably as well. Just the one missed tackle and the one error this week gone. Last week against the Cowboys, not a single error, not a single missed tackle as well. So when you got a half there on defending on the edge, defending against some big boys, typically that they can fall off a tackle or two. Nicho Hynes certainly has in the past. He doesn't always, wrap up that tackle or put his body behind it and can simply fall off. And that's just showing really good signs that he's confident in his footy. The Sharkies are ticking along pretty nicely. Yeah, they had a pretty easy matchup there against the depleted Tigers after losing Adam Dewey. But yeah, I think he's going along nicely and scoring points across all statistical categories is the bloke that you want in your side.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, look, I'll probably regret saying this where everyone's going to be able to rewind and go back and screen grab whatever I say. But I don't think I'm ever going to fade Nicho Hynes again after I faded. I said I was going to fade. Well, I said I wasn't going to play him last week. It wasn't a fade, but not playing him and missed out on his massive score. Obviously, a big game. And it looks to be about 78 that he scored last week. So, yeah, definitely missed that score on my side. But hopefully it didn't damage my champion side too much. Look, there's a bit of a theme here as well that we talked about, and that's the Storm boys up against the depleted Tigers. Jerome Hughes comes back from that HIA, and I think it could be a great pod. Potentially might even be in that strongly considered category. We obviously touched on Munster. He is not producing the footy, and he has said that himself. He's not producing the footy that we know and love from Cam Munster, and at the moment, I don't see a world where he will have to be in the Origin side somewhere. I'm not sure where that will be and what that will look like. But on the other side, Hughes continues to produce some really good footy, and he's saying that he's continuing to do that for coaches over the last few weeks. So he's up against the depleted Tigers. There's some vulnerability there for right halves as well. Round 8. We saw Strange score only 10 GDS points, but he had limited minutes. So the average against the Tigers doesn't look great. But look, Hynes last week, massive score. The key, though, interesting, is whether the difference is going to be with KPP back in the side for the Tigers and how that changes the dynamic there. But there's also a number of key players missing. I think Dream Buller at the back is going to be a big loss. Api Coruscant through the middle, another big loss. And then Adam Dewey, obviously, out for a number of weeks now as well. I believe he needs surgery, so that could be a while until he's back. So there's some key losses there. And I think Hughes could be that third player that we have in our halves alongside Hynes and Cleary.
Yeah, I'm finding that third half spot really difficult. I think you're a bit higher than Jerome Hughes than I am, but I think that just comes back to when I was pretty confident on him against the Warriors back in round 6. Dewey, I think, had just torn them apart, and everyone was scoring points down that edge. Jerome Hughes had scored 58, 75, 65 before a down 36 against Penrith, which was forgiven, excusable, but then came out with just a 29 there against the Warriors after, I think I must have played him across all 3 teams and had a pretty disappointing return as a result of that. So you're a little bit scarred by that. Bounced back with a nice 74 against the Warriors. Had the HIA against the Rabbitohs there. Just not a goal-kicking half. His kick meters in general play have been down as well. Sub 300 isn't what you want to see from a guy you'd expect to be, the chief kicker there. You sort of want to see Jerome Hughes back to 450, 500. Yeah. That's where he gets through a lot of his base points there. When he's not kicking goals, that provides a bit of safety to that floor. So, yeah, I know you're a bit higher than me. The matchup is pretty nice. If there was a week that I was going to go back and test out that faith, it would be this round. I just think that third half spot, really difficult for me this week.
All right, put us out of our misery then. Who is your third half that you're going to play instead of Jerome Hughes?
Oh, I still don't know. Is it Fletcher Sharp? I think it might be. I just want as much of that Newcastle Knights left edge. He's been good recently, but it just hasn't really translated to GDS scores. We saw him come out absolutely firing in game 1, and if he stayed on the park for 80 minutes over there in Vegas, he probably would have turned up. He was in that much form. The knee injury, obviously, pretty devastating blow for both him and the Knights. They've now got their team back together. You'd expect every game he's only going to get better, more confident on that knee. Looked really good early on, but still a pretty low score. I think, around 40 or maybe even lower, which, looking at that first 20 minutes, you probably thought, oh, we're on here. Nice 50 or 60 there for Fletcher Sharp. I think he can get back to some big numbers shortly. If it's going to happen, it's going to have to happen this weekend against the Dragons. So, yeah, I think he will be pretty heavily underplayed and that's the week I might want to go against the crowd and find a spot for him.
Yeah, it's one of those tough things where, his scores aren't reflecting how he's playing, but he also doesn't have that upside of kicking goals like a lot of other halves as well. So when he doesn't have that big performance, it's quite difficult. And look, having a look at his stats at the moment, he's got one game over 50 points. The rest are 48, less than 30 across a couple of games, and then a couple of 30s in there as well. So it's not good viewing when you look at it from that point of view. I guess the upside is that Sammy Walker just put on a 95 against the Dragons before their bye. So if we go off that, even before that, they're still allowing 50 GDS points across the park in terms of that side of the field for halves. So I think for me, it's probably a play. It's definitely going to be a play in the under 24s. It's just going to be between him or Hughes, I think. I don't think I can get myself to a Mitch Moses unless you can convince me otherwise that Mitchell Moses is a must play this week.
No, not a must play, but a very tantalising pod. We've attacked that right half against the Cowboys for a long time, haven't we? And it's been fruitful. It's been fortuitous. Lockie Galvin top scored in terms of fantasy points the weekend just gone there against the Cowboys in that exact same spot. And Mitchell Moses has been a fantasy gun of the past. He's in red hot contention, probably for the number 6 jersey for New South Wales, partnering alongside Nathan Cleary there. So he's going to have a big blow-up game. It's probably in the matchup that suits. And it wouldn't surprise me if we're talking Wednesday night next week and we're talking about a big Mitchy Moses 80-point game and he wasn't in any of my sides because I've chickened out just because the Eels are not fun to watch and Moses has been probably below par or below what we probably expect from him compared to recent seasons.
Yeah, and I was having a look at that, and when we started to put together the show, I was sort of having a look at some of the stats and then looking at primetime, thinking, well, maybe he's going to be a really good primetime option. But then you're going to be playing him over the likes of Jaden Campbell, DCE, or Sammy Walker, or Clifford and or even Izzy Katoa, and it just doesn't look great on paper. But one of those blokes is someone that we are. You're playing him. There you go. Yeah. But look, one of those blokes is someone that we are fading in the full slate, and that's Jaden Campbell. On paper, he looks matchup proof, but is this the time that he probably doesn't have a big score this week up against the Roosters?
Yeah, maybe. And Nicho Hynes, that was his one down game in the last sort of 6 weeks of footy. Roosters are in form and they look to take out the opposition playmaker or the opposition best weapon. And that was Nicho Hynes in that fixture. It's no word of a lie. It's no secret. It's Jaden Campbell for this team. Look, last week he was in plenty of my sides and I thought, gee, the Titans are going pretty poor here. There's been plenty of tries down that side of the field. He fell off a couple of, Simi Sasungi runs. And I was a bit scared to have a look at a different fantasy app to see what score Jaden Campbell was on. And it surprised me that he was over 60. And I thought he's not done a lot and he's probably 30 or 40 and I'd maybe be happy with a 50, but I was so surprised to see above 60. And it just reminded me that he's another accumulator. The Titans don't have to be winning games for him to be scoring fantasy points. It just is unlikely to happen here against the Roosters. They're a matchup I'm really concerned about at the moment.
Yeah, and look, in terms of GDS points, it looks to be 57 GDS points. So yeah, you're right on the money there. That it just sort of came out of nowhere, and very similar to the accumulator that we have in Cleary. I think JC is a bit the same, but he's got plenty of attacking upside. We've already seen 4 tries from him, 2 of those intercepts as well, going the length of the field. So there's some opportunity there. Look, getting to some comments. I know we've talked a lot. We haven't really got to a lot of comments. Let's jump back a bit. Mel's Misfits saying, Dill's saying he's never fading Hynes again. So there comes a low score incoming. It's look, I'm going to actually blame Mel if Hynes scores because she's put that out there now. That's actually Mel's Misfits' fault. So Mel, I'm keeping an eye on you. G'day to Timo. Thanks for joining us, mate. It's good to see you in the chat. And then Cozzy, Stu's convinced him. I'm going with Moses in at least one of my teams. So there you go. So you two can be disappointed at the end of the week. No, you guys can ride the Mitchell Moses train for sure. Alrighty, let's jump into the back section of the competition in terms of our 2 centers, our wingers, and our 1 fullback, plus the combination of any 2 players on the bench as well. And in the centers, look, we've got a big injury in Adam Dewey. He was a must-play each and every week, so we've got to find a spot for a second center. I think majority of coaches avoid a third center at all on the bench. So we're just talking about 2 main blokes here. And look, our strongly considered Herbie Farnworth is a player that we play each and every round. Cal Ero rewarded coaches last week, particularly in that Sunday showdown, outscoring his the other side of the field in Talakai, who we said might have a big game. And then Tolakula still at the fullback role there while Tommy Trbojevic recovers. He's definitely a look at again, although he's still being restricted a little bit by the halves there. Hopefully Fogarty can unlock something from Tolakula. We've got Bradman Best, who returned and had a pretty good game. We've got Tommy Chester as well in our points of difference. And then our two fades, Val Holmes and Rob Toyer. Obviously, Val Holmes is not someone we play very often, but there's potentially a little bit of a conversation around there with the matchup potentially that he might have, depending on the side of the field that he stays. But look, let's not talk about Herbie Farnworth. Everyone's going to plug and play Herbie. Who's your second centre this week? Is it Iro or is it Tolakula?
Yeah, I don't know. It might not be either of them. It might actually be Bradman Best, again, targeting that Dragons matchup. Obviously missed, I think, 3 or 4 games after that Raiders, the injury against the Raiders there. Hadn't really set the competition alight in terms of fantasy output, but again, no KP in that side. The Knights are totally different. KP returns, Bradman Best returns. No tries, but 51 GDS points, 3 try assists, 3 line break assists. If he can get the ball to Marju with a bit of space, Marju's big enough and powerful enough to find the try line there, and Brady Best can chip in for some tries there. But I think KP is going to feed that edge a lot. And the Dragons matchup is just one that just screams play me all over it. I think the Tolakula shout seems the most logical, a fullback in real life playing in the center position, but I'm starting to think it's almost the reverse Latrell Mitchell effect. Kula's a center in GameDay Squad playing fullback in Clubland, but he's not troubling the scorers as much at fullback as he has at center. He seems far more at home in the centers. Granted, obviously, that's with Tommy Trbojevic in the side when he's playing fullback. He is the fullback and there's no Tommy Turbo there. So the reverse, though, is Latrell Mitchell playing in the centers. We're playing him in our fullback spot, but he is absolutely killing it. And you'd probably think, well, if he was at fullback, his point scoring would be a lot more. I think it's the reverse Latrell effect. I don't actually love Kula fullback, no Tommy. I'd almost prefer Kula center, Tommy fullback for him to be a bit more of an option, despite the out of position sort of gun matchup there.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I look in my notes. I said he's probably a shell of his former centre self at the moment, and that's what we're getting in terms of GDS points. So I think I'm happy to keep him on the side at the moment and just watch and wait. And if anything changes there, then potentially make that. For me, it's probably Edo, purely based on everything you said about Bradman Best and what he did last week to the Rabbits. I think Edo lining up in the similar spot, I think he could do something similar. He obviously coming off a massive game, so I don't necessarily like the fact that I'm chasing points potentially, but the upside is there. The Rabbits have been fairly tight down that side defensively for majority of the season, but Bradman just showed that it can be really exploited, and I think Edo could do something similar. So it's probably a discussion between those two for me. If someone doesn't have Bradman Best or Kale Edo or maybe even Herbie Farnworth, who's probably the next best for you? Is it that Tommy Chester shout? Or is it maybe someone like Dane Gagai in a similar position with a similar defensive lineup against him in the Dragons?
Yeah, I think we might actually have seen Val move permanently back to the left, which is just a dream matchup for Dane Gagai being the right centre for the Newcastle Knights there. I want to get a nice close look there at warm-ups and see exactly what type of what side of the field Val Holmes is on. And yeah, look, if he's lining up on the left, the ultimate pod could be Dane Gagai. No offense to Val Holmes, of course. Great footballer, has not had a very good season, and he just seems to be missing tackles left, right, and centre. He's dropping the footy, and his opposition centre is picking the ball up and running the length as well. So you just know things are going to happen around Val Holmes. So if he's on the left-hand side of the field, I might find a spot for Gags. If he's on the right where he started the season, I think that just makes the Bradman Best play even better. But yeah, look, that second center option, you go against the grain and go somewhere different, someone that we haven't even really considered. It could be the difference. Kale Ero, 2 hat tricks in a row. It just seems so yuck chasing those points, but obviously in a bit of form, and the Sharkies have realised they've got an absolute weapon out there, and they probably want to start using him a bit better. They've realised Talakai is no good. They probably want Ramian back nice and soon. Talakai's a bit of a flat track bully, isn't he? Bradman Best, Dane Gagai. Let's target the Dragons once again.
And I guess that then leads into why we have Val Holmes on the fade list. Obviously, he's not someone we look at every single week, but potentially you might look at him. If he does line up on that left side, Latrell just absolutely annihilated that right side Knights defensively. I think he's going to end up on about 88, 86 GDS points down that side. So, look, it still means, though, that the Knights are only allowing 33 GDS points to left centers. We talked about it last week about a potential why Latrell might not score well, but it still means that there's probably every opportunity for the Knights to defend that side really well. So if you are trying to chase the points that Latrell put up against the Knights, I think Holmes is not the option there because, as you said, it's all about the demerits. He's making really unforced errors. He's missing tackles, as we've said a lot in the Val Holmes career, that he just continues to do that. So for me, it's a massive fade. Also, someone that I'm thinking about fading is Rob Toyer up against the up against the Titans. It's not a really favourable matchup, and I think if anything, I'll be really considering whether Rob Toyer comes into my under 24 side. Having a State of Origin card with Rob Toyer does help with the salary a little bit in that side, but I'm just not sure whether I'm going to get there because on paper, you look at the Titans, you think, yeah, they're pretty easy matchup, but the data's not suggesting that. So, yeah, for me, Rob Toyer is just a bit of a fade there. Alrighty, let's jump into the winger spot. And once again, we've probably got a key winger that we're all going to play, and that's Suafai Longo. He's just going from strength to strength. It doesn't matter the opposition that he's up against. It doesn't matter the matchup data that we've got in front of us. The Tigers present a pretty tough matchup on paper. The data doesn't suggest Sua's going to have a big game, but as we've touched on plenty of times, the Tigers are depleted. So outside of Suafai Longo, who's the next best winger for you? Is it someone like Brian To'o, or is it Jenkins on the other side of the field up against the Raiders, or is there somewhere else you're looking at going instead?
Yeah, and I might go away from a Penrith winger for once, first time in about 10 weeks. We got the Brian To'o call right last round, of course, with the numbers sort of suggesting that side of the field was going to be far more fruitful than the left. I think Milky sub 20 when he's not scoring tries. We're going to see those types of points. But no, yeah, if I get away from the Panthers wingers, Bobby Jermaine Asako, a winger kicking goals is always pretty handy in fantasy. And when there's no clear-cut second option, I think you can default back to Asako. But he's shown plenty of upside with some try-scoring ability as well. The Dolphins are scoring plenty of points. They're still conceding plenty. They can get in some shootouts. The Doggies haven't been great themselves, but that side of Bostock, who looked really good last week, mind you, coming back, him and Asako on that side of the field get the much easier opposition matchup there in Cherry and John Osua, far more appealing than, coming up against Critter on the other side of the field. So I think that's where the footy's going to go. Yeah, that's away from Herbie, but if Herbie makes a half break like he does frequently and the opposition team is backpedaling, that's when the Isaiah Katoa will get the ball right. And look, they've scored plenty of tries down that channel. It wouldn't surprise to see Jermaine score at least one himself and kick maybe 4, 5, 6 goals, and that's a pretty handy floor there for a winger when there's no real clear-cut second option.
Yeah, and look, I was at that game, as I said, on Friday night, the Dolphins up against the Storm. I'm not sure if it translated onto TV, but it was very obvious that Katoa wanted to target the Bostock-Asako matchup, whether with ball in hand or through kicking. And in particular, kicking, he was purposely leaving it inside the field for Bostock rather than kicking to Asako's wing. So it was really obvious that they knew that what they had in Jackie Bostock getting up there and making the play. So they were making sure it was going to him. So, yeah, like you said, if it doesn't go to Asako and Bostock does score, it just means Asako is kicking that goal, which we're still going up in threes anyway. And look, the Bulldogs matchup looks to be a really positive one. They're allowing an average of 42 to all wingers in the competition so far this season. So I think Jermaine Asako is a great play. He's averaging 40 GDS points in base and power, so that's including an average of 4 goals kicked per game. Plus, he's got that upside. He's averaging almost 1 try per game. I think there's 2 games he hasn't scored a try yet across this season so far. So I think it's a really good call when maybe there's some doubt over the combination between Brian To'o and Milky Jenkins. But just on that combination, as you said, we got that right last week with the To'o outscoring Jenkins. The data this week, it still suggests slightly better opportunity for Brian To'o on the right versus the left wingers against the Raiders. They're slightly scoring more I then did a little bit of a deeper dive for the two of them and comparing the two of them. Their base and power in terms of Bizzer and Jenkins is almost identical now that they're back to what they've been demonstrating over the last couple of weeks. It's really only that try scoring from Milky Jenkins that we saw earlier in the season that has them at differences. So if you can't split them, then I think Jermaine Asako is a perfect option there. Obviously, Jermaine Asako is available in a couple of other comps as well, so we make sure we get him into that side there too. But if you don't have those players, as we've said, we've also got the points of difference. We've put Tom Jenkins there, but we've got the point of difference of Greggy Marju. We've also got a couple of fades in Taruva and Burns. Is Greg Marju someone that we're happy to chase points on again? I know we've talked about almost every single Knights player that we can possibly play, but is he someone that you're having a serious look at as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think given the Dragons matchup, you can realistically play Sharp, Ponga out the back, Dill Lucas, Bradman Best, Greggy Marju, and just pray and cheer that the ball goes down the left-hand side of the field. Whenever it does, you are just racking up points left, and left, not left, right, and centre, because you've got no players over there. But yeah, anytime the footy goes left, you're getting points. KP's kicking the footy over the sticks as well. If they can put on 50 or 60 points, and you've gotten brave and played a couple of these pods in Best and Greggy Marju there, I think we'll see someone on the podium with a couple of Knights players in their back line.
Yeah, look, 73 points, I think, from that game on the weekend. That does include a hat-trick. So it's probably not as high as what you'd want if you see a hat-trick there, but still, you're not going to complain about 73 points from Greggy Marju. The Dragons are allowing an average of 48 points per player down that side on the left wing, so plenty of opportunity there. For me, as I said, Taruva is probably a big fade this week. He's back to the wing. He wasn't great at fullback, but the Storm have still been pretty good at restricting that side of the field in terms of wingers. So they're averaging 45 versus 37 on the right side. So I think for me, that's a fade. And then same with Burns versus the Eels. We've gone to Burns a couple of times as a potential point of difference, but the Eels are only allowing 33 to the right side wingers versus 46 on the left. So that might be an opportunity to exploit that. Just quickly, Luke Skipper has come through. I'll throw the question to you to continue the rivalry, mate. Is Dom Young then an option as well? If we're going left, does that mean at some point Dom Young gets the ball back on the right and he can make a breakthrough and we get some points from him as well?
Yeah, if Gags is lining up there on the if Val Holmes is lining up there on the left-hand side defensively, Dane Gagai is going to have a field day. Dom Young naturally will as a result of that. We've seen some massive games from Dom Young, but a lot of them do occur with no KP in the team, because we know that KP loves to go down that left-hand channel, and that's when we see blokes like Bradman Best and Marju excel when Gags and Dom Young are out there catching a bit of a cold. So yeah, I think Marju would be probably the safety play with plenty of upside. Dom Young would probably be the far more unique play, but has just about as high of a ceiling given his height, given his speed, a bit more of a threat in the air. So yeah, look, if you're expecting the Dragons to concede 50, there's no harm in throwing either of those Knights wingers in there and just expecting a pretty decent score from either of them.
And I think just quickly for me, I think Dom Young, I don't have the data right now to back it up, but just offhand, I feel like he scores more tries through the air where you're not getting those tackle breaks, the line breaks, etc. on top of that. So I think if Dom Young's going to score, he's going to do it through the air, whereas Marju's going to do it on the ground. And so we're going to get some extra points on top of that if he does score a try. But obviously that is just offhand comment. It's not necessarily backed up with any data, but I might look into that for next week. Alrighty, let's jump into fullbacks. And to be honest, we've probably got 6 genuine options that we could look to this week. We probably can only pick a maximum of 3. I don't think there's any world where I won't be playing at least 3 fullbacks in every one of my competitions. Look, Kalen Ponga back to his absolute best. James Tedesco is someone we just can't fade, and Linda Trell is just in another world on another planet. Our points of difference here, we've got Drinkwater and Walsh, and then our fades, Jai Gray returns to the back for the Bunnies. And then Keanu Kinney is someone that we've liked a lot, but I think he's on a fade list this week. Out of those fullbacks, who is your number one for this week, Stu?
Yeah, it's going to be KP. Dream matchup there with the Dragons. It's been the theme all show. Do the Dragons turn things around coming off that bye? Have they had, a big, a deep chat amongst the playing group and they all of a sudden come out and look like the Dragons of old? I don't think so. Second best second best matchup in the entire competition are fullbacks against the St. George Illawarra Dragons. The Newcastle Knights will take advantage of that. Kalen Ponga looked absolutely electric last week. He's only going to be better for the run. And not only that, he's going to be kicking goals as well. We're expecting points to be scored. The only slight query is I just feel like Wollongong down there is a bit of a fortress for opposition teams. And will that be all that unravels the Knights there? Maybe a little bit of wind. The footy's not sort of coming out of the hands well, and the Knights have a bit of an off game. No, I like the matchup. It's KP for me. I think the Dragons are a bit of a basket case and lock KP in for a big one.
Yeah, I agree. Look, the Dragons allowing almost 60 GDS points to fullbacks. I think it's nice and easy play. The concern for me is having so many Knights in my side. Every time we've done that and we've loaded up on plenty of players from the same team, we are absolutely disappointed. But I think it's hard not to ignore some of those stats that we've talked about today. Look, it's also hard to ignore James Tedesco in the lead up to Origin. He's just playing some unreal footy. It's probably not the most ideal matchup that we've got. The Titans are giving up an average of 42, plus they just allowed Dane Laurie 55 GDS points on the weekend. So that average is going to slightly increase, but it's actually not that great compared to some of the other better matchups that we've got. But I think it's really hard to fade Teddy in any form of GDS purely based on the amount of tackle breaks he makes, the amount of meters he makes, and that base and power that we get from him, plus his ability to slice through the line at will, to give an offload for a try assist and potentially even a try himself. I think it's really hard to not fade him. So for me, James Tedesco is probably that third player that I'm going to have in the side. Is that something similar to what you're thinking as well?
Yeah, matchup proof, I think, for me. The Titans defense against fullbacks was quite interesting, seeing about the fifth worst matchup for all fullbacks. But Teddy's good enough to take advantage of that. The Roosters are going to decimate the Titans. They're going to roll all over them down there in Gosford, and Teddy's going to be amongst the points.
Yeah, definitely. And look, you can't fade Latrell Mitchell either. There's no way in the world that I'll be fading him. We said the matchup last week against the Knights, they were giving up less than 30 GDS points to left centres, and that was the hardest matchup. And Trell sort of just threw that data out the window and said, "No, here's my 85 GDS points from 165 running meters, 9 tackles, 7 tackle breaks, 5 goals." And then he had 2 try assists and a try himself. So, look, he's top of the averages for a reason, and I don't think there's any reason to run away from that. So let's just keep going with Latrell Mitchell in our sides. But if you don't have a Latrell Mitchell card, you maybe not have a Teddy. Obviously, if you're new to GameDay Squad, make sure you hit us up on Discord or Insta or wherever else, and we'll try and get you some of those bronze cards for sure. But where else might players be able to go if they don't have some of those key guys?
Yeah, Reece Walsh was a pretty hard watch last week, not having him in any of my sides. We know just he's capable of an absolute monster score. And when the Bronx were making that comeback there against the Roosters, you just thought Reece Walsh was going to have his fingerprints over absolutely everything. Couple of mistakes, Reece Walsh-esque mistakes, obviously bringing that score down a little bit there. But look, the matchup with Manly, definitely a little bit easier there than the Roosters. And I think... I think Reece Walsh definitely is a massive pod. Anytime he takes the field, really, he can have a monster score. And if he's not in your side, it's always a tough watching the Bronx if they're on a bit of a roll, because he can absolutely put a game to bed so quickly. And if he's not in your fantasy side, then you could be struggling to catch up. Skip has asked a question there about Reece Walsh, actually. So nice little segue there. He has asked whether Walsh or Duffy kicks. The answer to that, I think, is pretty simple there in Duffy. We saw it last week. Very good kicker. But look, I don't even know if Tom Duffy will play this week. I do believe that Benny Hunt will make a bit of a stunning return there from injury, which might see Duffy relegated to the bench, which just means that Reece Walsh gets that kicking tee, and if that's the case, there's even a stronger reason to roll out Reece Walsh there as a bit of a pod if you want to go against maybe a Teddy and thinking that Titans matchup isn't as elite as it might sound. So, yeah, let's wait and see, Skip. Duffy kicks, I'd imagine, but might not even be in the 13 or the 17. So, Reece Walsh will get the tee there, and when he's kicking goals without Adam Reynolds in the side, he's just a different beast, isn't he?
Yep. And look, you come here for the stats, but you also get the good oil on the potential lineup of some of the teams. So great to see. Hopefully that helps your insight. Look, I am contractually obliged to throw out one name at least once a season. So here it is. Make sure that you've tuned in, you're listening. Connor Tracy. has a positive matchup this week against the Dolphins. It's not very often that we say his name, but Connor Tracy could be an option for you. The Dolphins are allowing an average of 55 GDS points to fullbacks with top scores of 76, 86, and then 69 on the weekend as well. And that's to Tuapiki, Walsh, and then Dane Laurie. Sui Failongo. Sorry, I was thinking about someone else. Sui Failongo on the weekend against the Dolphins. So there's some opportunity there. He's not going to get into my full round slate at all, but they do have the first game at Suncorp Stadium again, the Dolphins' first home, not so much their second home anymore. So he could find a way into my primetime side as a massive point of difference. I don't recommend you necessarily following that. We know how that's ended up in the past, but he is maybe an option for your primetime sides as well.
Yeah, nah, not for me.
Yeah, definitely. Alrighty, that is it. Let's jump into our consensus primetime side. And look, it's our consensus squad for the Stats Lab primetime competition. Massive shout out to our partner in Stats Lab team for their ongoing support of the Fantasy Bros. Make sure you head over. We've obviously used plenty of their stats today to talk through some of our plays and some of our fades. Head to statslab.app and check out all those awesome tools. They've got player stats available for every game. They've got matchup strength, those player comparisons that I talked about earlier. Plus, there's plenty of other analysis tools that you can use to help dominate GameDay Squad. So having a look at our teams on screen, this is who we think is going to be in our starting lineup for the Stats Lab primetime competition. You can see quite a few across the teams are getting a run. So we've got Ruben Cotter and Jack Williams up front there with Reece Robson, who we've talked about hooking the scrum. We've then obviously got Jacob Preston paired up with Helam Lukey, and then Tino makes his way into a side finally. We're not fading Tino this week. He's starting to find a little bit of form at a good time in the competition as well. Our halves, JC, we're still going to go with him, and Sammy Walker, who's in some great form. Our backs, in terms of our centres, are Herbie Farnworth and Tommy Chester, who we've talked about. Our wingers are Asako and Dan Tupou, looks to have a really positive matchup there as well. And then James Tedesco at the back. So if you want to follow that and then add some spice in the bench, make sure you do that to be in the chance to win $1,000 before the weekend even begins. Alrighty, let's jump across and have a look at now our full squad, our full slate squad for our round 10 side. I mean, these are the blokes we've all talked about, but on screen, you can see Alex Twal and Tyrrell May up front with Brayley in the middle there at hooker. We've then got Olakau'atu and Lucas on the edges with Isaiah Yeo locking the scrum. In our halves, the tried and true method of going Cleary and Hines. Our backs, we've still gone with Cooler. I probably feel like we talked ourselves out of it a little bit, so maybe Bradman Best should find his way there instead, alongside Farnworth in the centres. We've got Failongo and Isako on the wing, and then Kalen Ponga at the back there. So keen to run that side out and then have a look at what our bench looks like. Alrighty. As always, one of our favourite parts of the show, particularly my favourite at the moment, it is the BroDown ShowDown. We go head-to-head. We pick 3 players from 3 different positions that we spin before the show goes live. Last week, I got up with Failongo, Olakau'atu, and Cleary, besting the 3 of To'o, Wong, and Campbell. So anyone that voted for me, you were in the draw to win a 9-player common pack. And Stu spun that wheel earlier because no doubt everyone knows the issues that I have with the wheels. And the winner of that was Sif Kanga. So let's jump straight into his pack. I've just seen the time. We are running way over time.
What do you mean you've
AFL
just
boys,
seen it?
No doubt. Mate, I'm an absolute professional, and I've been so focused on everything else but tonight. Alrighty, let's jump in. It is a unique pack this week for Sif Kanga. It is coming up on screen here for him. Let's get straight into it, and then let's get out of here to let the AFL boys do their thing. Alrighty, Sif Kanga, good luck, mate. We've got the good animation happening here. Let's see what we can get for you. Starting us off, we've got a James Fisher-Harris, a Jake Clifford, Fitzgibbon, Leo McDonald, Hayes. We've got the Diamond Sigwald, unfortunately, the Gutherson, and the Penasini. So some good platinums there to be able to use across a number of competitions. Just a shame about that diamond. So Sif Kanga, hit me up on Discord and we'll get those to you.
Where is
sensational. I don't know, mate. I was going to say that earlier. We haven't seen his all caps. Anyway, let's jump into this week's BroDown Showdown. I am up 6-4 across the series. We've got Stewie's Nathan Cleary up against my Nico Hines. We've got Simi Sasangi up against Olakau'atu and Kalen Ponga up against Latrell Mitchell. If you think Stu's going to get it done this week with his serve, then make sure you comment Stu. If you think I'm going to break again and go 7-4 up, let me know in the comments and say Dyl. Remember, you can comment all the way up to the first game of the Sunday Showdown on Sunday at 2 p.m. Alrighty, talking about that, we should be coming to you live this Sunday. Obviously, it is Mother's Day, so we will keep an eye on that and let you know if anything changes there. If not, we will see you next Wednesday, May 13th, for a massive Magic Round preview. And look, just quietly, I think Stu and I are going to be at Magic Round on the Saturday, mainly at Caxton Street, probably just at the Caxton Hotel. So if you come along and see us there, we might shout you a little drink as well. Bring your Fantasy Bros gear that you can get from the Fantasy Bros website, fantasybrosau.com, and we'll double that into maybe a sneaky little tiny shot in a shot glass for you there if you are supporting the Fantasy Bros. No, we look forward to seeing you at Magic Round. Mate, good luck this weekend. Hopefully we get some scores through from GDS very soon so we can start making our teams. Have a good one, guys. Thank you very much for joining us as always. And Stu, I will see you again soon.
Thanks, Dyl. Thanks, everyone. Good luck this week.
Thanks, guys. See you later.